Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is 6:41 in the morning. It is Wednesday, the 21st of June, day 33 of the No Caffeine Stimulate Yourself Tour. We're only in one city. Well, that's not true. Going to be going to Michigan. Going to be going to Michigan for my niece's wedding very soon. In fact, I'm flying out tomorrow. The wedding is the day after tomorrow. So, I would like to talk about ego. What I think about it, and my definition of ego, and the confusion that I have noticed in the spiritual community about ego. Okay, so first, there's one confusion in which people think that ego and pride are synonymous, or basically the opposite of humility: self-inflation, self-aggrandizement, self-centeredness, self-importance. All of these are traits of the ego, but that's not all the ego is. The other side of it is, it's everything that you think you are, right? So when I talk about ego, I'm not just talking about being egotistical, right? Which is sort of, egotistical is kind of, in the vernacular, it's like a swollen or an inflamed ego, right? Where, for whatever reason, possibly because you are concerned that you're not going to get the respect that you deserve, or the things that you need, or whatever, you go around proclaiming, these are my rights, this is what I need, you got to do this for me, and how great you are. And certainly that is one type of ego, but that is not the only thing that ego is. So what ego actually is just who you think you are. It's an identity, it's a personality structure. And the problem with these is that what we really are is energy at the basis. At the subtlest, subtle's not the right word, but at the furthest level that I can get to conceptually, what we are is the universe, and what the universe is energy, and this energy comes on in different forms, and every form of energy that comes on arises and passes away. And so if you look, if you forget everything that you think you know about yourself and you actually pay attention to yourself, you're not the same. You're not the same that you were yesterday, and most likely you'll be different again tomorrow. You're angry sometimes, you're happy sometimes. These things rise and pass away. You're hungry, you're full. You're rich, you're poor. You're happy, you're sad. You're awake, you're asleep. We go through these things. You're conservative, you're liberal, and within an individual person, if you pay attention, your actual beliefs will probably change over the year. Everything that you think you are will change. You're not good at this, and then you practice at it, and now you're good at it. Well, who are you? And if you think it's the body, well, that's changing all the time too. It gets fatter, it gets stronger, it gets taller, it gets shorter sometimes. It gets weaker. It goes through immune responses, that change the way that it is. It gets battered and beat up, and it regenerates, and it takes in food, and it digests it, and it gets rid of it, and It's not the same cells that it was. It's not the same molecules that it was. The oldest cell in your body, I hear different numbers on this, but it's probably about 7 years old at the most. So what I'm saying is, in the same way that you look at a candle flame and you can recognize a candle flame and you can conceptualize it as a thing, like, okay, so there's the candle flame. But it's not the same thing the whole time. It's moving. Maybe you can see it a little bit better in a whirlpool or a river. Like, the water goes by and the water goes by and the water goes by, and we know that it's the same river, but it's not. It's the water going by, and it's not the same water. There's no river. There's just water that goes by. Or a whirlpool in the river, you can see the little whirlpool, and the pattern is recognizable. And so in the same way, and that's all just part of the larger thing. So the ego is this sense of self. And you're like, okay, so I'm me. I'm the Wolfman, right? The Wolfman is an ego, for sure. And it's different than Ben Gross. And it's recognizable, right? Because the Wolfman is a performative, it's a stage name, it's a role. It's like, okay, it's curated. It's authentic, but it's curated. And so, like, what do I believe? What are my ideals? And I pour all that into the Wolfman, and then either way, I want to think about myself as Ben Gross or as the Wolfman. It's an identity, and if I try to hold on to any part of it, then when a situation comes up where what do I think about myself? Let me try to come up with a good example. I got nothing. I got nothing, man. I know that there are situations that come up where you thought you were a certain way, but that person can't survive. That person can't survive. Okay, so for instance, I used to be a person with an older brother. Now my older brother is dead. So am I still, like, that was part of my identity, which made it part of my ego. So when Ray died, I had to change. Okay, which brings me to, okay, so to recap, we're energy. We are the substance, I can't remember the word, substantive? It's a word that derives from substance. The essential energy of the universe. The universe is one thing, and our minds divide it into many things. And how real those things are is up for debate. And it's up for debate in science, and it's up for debate in spirituality, and it's up for debate in religion. And even among scientists, there's a lot of debate on how real this whole thing is. But regardless, the universe, energy, okay? Call it what you want. Universe is one thing. And that thing is made of energy. And there are recognizable patterns of energy that show up. And some of these patterns we call people, and we give them names, and then we convince them that they are not the universe, that they are separate somehow from the universe, that they are not interdependent with all the other beings in the universe, and with all the other beings on Earth, and with the Earth itself, and all of that. And that's garbage. If you pay attention, it's quite clear that we're all interdependent on each other. We're breathing the same air. We're drinking the same water. It all cycles through all of us. There's air in my lungs that used to be in somebody else's lungs. And there's air in my veins. There's oxygen in my veins that used to be in someone else's blood. And, you know, we're all interdependent. But we get these egos that say, well, this is me and this is mine. And they're very useful. They're not bad things. But they're only relatively real. Okay? So they're not bad. That's it. They're not bad things, but they're limited. Okay? So they're if you are you, and you're not just the universe coming on as you, then there's a limit. There's a very clearly defined limit. And when you get into a situation that you can't handle, you're fucked. So, when you get into a situation that you can't handle, the ego dies. And this brings me to the second confusion, which is the confusion about ego death. And so when the ego dies, it can be as simple as, you know, I'm a person that drinks every night after work. You know what? I'm not going to drink after work anymore. Okay, that's going to be difficult and painful to the degree that I believe the statement that I am a person who drinks after work. And so the ego dies and becomes a new ego. Instantly. That's the thing that people don't seem to understand in the spiritual community. I fucking blasted my ego with, you know, mushrooms or LSD or DMT, or fucking I meditated until my ego went away, or breath work, or, you know, near-death experience, whatever it was. Like I experienced being everything, and now my ego is dead. I don't have an ego anymore, and I'm enlightened. Bullshit, okay? The instant the ego dies, most of the time, it gets replaced with a brand new ego. So every time you have a death, you have a rebirth. Death, rebirth, death, rebirth. Now, with certain techniques like psychedelics, meditation, and so on and so forth, yes, you can sit in that space between the death and the rebirth for a while. Okay, so you could get bombed out on acid. You could lose your ego for, I don't know, an hour or two, and then you could have a very strange ego for like 6 or 8 more hours, and then you come back out the other side, and what do? You either reassert your you come back, you have another ego. Okay, so the ego dies, the ego is reborn. And yes, it is possible to spend some time in between, but it doesn't seem possible to move in the world without an ego, a personality structure, an identity. Okay, now there's certainly, it's possible to be unattached or to be less attached to your ego. You're like, yes, you know, I'm the hat on the Monopoly board. Like, so somebody else that's playing Monopoly with you says, I'm sorry, which piece are you? Are you the hat? You don't go, well, I'm not actually the hat. I'm the person playing the hat. Like, yeah, no shit, okay? But you know you're the hat, right? So in the same way, you can be unattached from your ego. Doesn't mean that you don't have an ego. It doesn't mean that you're not your ego in some sense. In some very real sense. Doesn't mean that you're not your ego. So we have the ego death, and then we have the rebirth. And I think that's the confusion, is that like there's going to be this ego death, this permanent ego death. No. The ego doesn't die permanently. It dies and it's immediately reborn. And all the ego is, the ego isn't pride. You're thinking of egoism or egotism, whichever way you like to say it. I think both are acceptable. So the ego dies, but it's instantly replaced with a new ego. And all it is, it's just a recognizable pattern. It's an identity. It's a personality structure. This is all the ego is. It's not all that you are. but you have one, and I'm quite certain that Buddha had one and Jesus had one. You know, when somebody walked up to the Buddha and said, hey Buddha, I have a question. He didn't go, who? You know, like, you don't lose it. I love it. Just complete side note. I love it when you pass a person on the road and they're doing 55 and you pass them and you're doing 65 and now they're tailgating you. Why? Anyway, doesn't matter. So that's the video on ego. I don't know. That's the video on ego, man. I hope your ego enjoyed it. My ego very much enjoyed producing it. Yes. Kono ne, kono yoko. May your heart be happy. May your mind be clear. May you find satisfaction in all your endeavors. And may you find ultimate satisfaction.